Hello, welcome to the Sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Knoxville, Tennessee. Part of the SCG Tour brought to you by Ultimate Guard. I'm Nick Miller alongside Team Nexus's own, the Tannon Grace.
How you doing today, Nick?
Good. How you doing, sir?
Doing all right. A little tired from the drive up. It was a long drive. Not doing great record-wise today, but the deck's a lot of fun. So definitely interested to talk about it.
A portion of the Nexus team is on this black-green Aetherworks Marvel deck that plays similarly to a Delirium deck, but it's more so Aetherworks Marvel. And it's not quite the Marvel decks that we saw at the Pro Tour where it was just all-in Marvel. You get to play like a real game of Magic with this deck.
Yeah, absolutely. So this deck actually just plays out like the green-black Delirium deck. You have a lot of the same cards. Obviously, you can't fit everything into the deck, but it definitely plays out that way. You can still Liliana on 3 and win that way. You can still kill their creatures with Grasp of Darkness, and you can still Emrakul like the old-fashioned way, just casting it by getting a bunch of stuff into your graveyard and casting it pretty cheaply. But you have this kind of like all-in plan with Aetherworks Marvel as well. Instead of Transverse the Uvenwald, which we have as a 1 of in the deck, we have 4 Attune with Aethers. We have Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, we have Vessel of Nascency, and we have Servant of the Conduit. These cards either find you your Aetherworks Marvel, or they get you energy to use with your Aetherworks Marvel, along with Aether Hub too, to kind of supplement that. So, you kind of can go either way. So I like the deck a lot. It's got a lot of play to it. It's a lot of fun too. Right,
you have a lot of the energy to fuel the Aetherworks, but unlike the previous builds that were kind of all in on just Emrakul or Ulamog, you actually get some creatures you can play in the mid game when you're not in on the Marvels. So you've got Ishkanah and Noxious Gearhulk kind of as the in-between in this deck that aren't bad hits off of the works either, right?
No, absolutely not. They're really good. There's some situations where you actually don't want to Marvel in your main phase, which is weird since you have Emrakul because you want to take their next turn, but if you can get them in the middle of a combat step with an Ishkanah or like a Noxious Gearhulk, you can get like a pretty big blowout here. But I like that you brought up this point because it's pretty important. The decks that prey upon this deck, while they're not super popular, like not a lot of people aren't playing Control, there's still spell quellerers running around and stuff like that. So that's a problem for cards like Aetherworks Marvel. So you need to be able to beat that deck. And what's the best deck against blue-white and like in that card is Ishkanah, Noxious Gearhulk, and Emrakuls. So you can go over the top of that deck still in game 1. So you're not just all in, like you said, with the Marvel deck. You have other ways that you can play.
Right, yeah. Black-green Delirium is kind of the deck that beats the blue-white deck, and the blue-white deck seems to be beating up on everything else. And on the surface, blue-white with Spellqueller looks very good against the Aetherworks Marvel decks, but this deck, as you said, gets to play a real game. So you've got, all the things that fuel Delirium, fuel your graveyard. We've seen those. Vessel, Grapple, your Transverse, and then just kind of kill spells. Liliana kind of stands out in this deck because, what is this card doing in the Aetherworks deck? But it's mainly just there to kill creatures, get some card advantage.
So, you hit it right on the head, right? If it kills creatures, that's when Liliana's at its best, right? Liliana actually seems like a Planeswalker when it's getting to use the +1 for value. That doesn't happen very often in this format, but when it does, this is the single reason why you can beat the vehicle deck, so it's a really good matchup, believe it or not. Also, the -2, so this is the deck that I've been aggressively -2ing my Liliana with when I don't necessarily do that in green-black Delirium. You just want cards in your yard. You want your Ishkanahs to always have Delirium. You want to be able to cast your Emrakuls as soon as possible. Also, there's ways to win where you just infinitely recur Ishkanah, or you just keep recurring your Noxious Gearhulks over and over again and casting those every turn, just to buy you time until you Emrakul your opponent enough to kill them, because usually that's enough. Liliana's kind of a weird spot, right? You've seen the other green-red versions of this deck. I think that Chandra is a slightly better card in this metagame, but I like the rest of this deck better. And I like how you brought up those other decks that we're playing against, because that's what led me to this deck is, I wanted to be able to beat blue-white, and I wanted to be able to beat black-green, the 2 biggest decks, right? I feel like our black-green matchup is a buy in game 1. I feel it's very, very good, like over 70%. And then pretty good, like post-board, they bring in some stuff to fight you, obviously. And then you never have a great matchup against blue-white. They can always have an insane draw that just beats you, but this deck, can operate on multiple axes that can beat them. You can just jam an Aetherworks down their throat, or you could play the long game that Black-Green Delirium did. So when I was trying to figure out what deck I wanted to play this week, and I wanted to play an Aetherworks Marvel deck, but I wanted to play Black-Green Delirium, so I thought, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both? And so that's what brought us to this deck. I found it online, and we tweaked it a little bit, and I loved how it played in testing. I love the look on my opponent's face when you cast Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot out of nowhere, and stuff like that. So, and as I said, it's just a lot of fun.
Right, they're not going to expect the kind of energy pieces when they see stuff like the Delirium Shell off the bat. And now this deck kind of has the highs and lows of working with both versions of the deck, so you can kind of outgrind or go over the top of the Delirium deck itself. That's why you said like game 1 against Delirium so good. You have just way more Emrakul's than they do.
We have 4. And you can cast yours a lot sooner, right? We have more artifacts in our deck. We have the same amount of planeswalkers. We have artifact creatures in our deck as well. So cracking your vessels is actually just insane in that matchup. You get Delirium off the first one pretty often if you have like one other card in your graveyard. It actually creates energy off the Aetherworks Marvel. We're playing more Evolving Wilds in this deck as well, so we always have a land in our yard as well. Again, that gets energy off Aetherworks Marvel. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it, and yeah, you just get to go over the top of them because you're going to Emrakul them before they Emrakul you most of the time.
All right, so when trying to choose a deck, what is better about this deck than the Delirium deck and better than just the Aetherworks deck? Or why did you come to this deck,
Okay, so I haven't been able to play as much Magic as I'd like to over the last couple months. Real life has been keeping me very busy, getting in the way, however you want to word it. And I haven't been able to put in as much time like learning the format as I'd like to. I know the big decks, I watch coverage, I play a little bit, and I liked Black-Green Delirium a lot. I didn't like the idea of slugging through mirrors all day long, and I didn't like the idea of just having to play against blue-white and hoping I drew the good half of my deck against them. Also, I didn't want to play blue-white because, I didn't want to play mirrors all day long where I felt like I was at a slight disadvantage.
Yeah.
I think I'm a decent enough player, but I need the reps in to really, get that game going. So I wanted a deck that could still play a lot of games, but felt like a combo deck as well. Like, I can actually just ignore my opponent. One of my rounds today, I pretty much just ignored what my opponent did all day long and just shoved an Aetherworks Marvel down his throat.
Right.
And then in the other games, I've had to actually play the games. Like, I've had to actually cast spells, and it's fine. I cast an Ishkanal on turn 4 or 5, because you have Servant of the Conduit, made some guys. They attacked me, and I just let my Ishkanal die, and then I'm get it back, do it again. And I did this for 3 or 4 turns in a row until I Emrakuled them, or I found a Noxious Gearhulk to turn the game around. So it feels like a combo deck, but it actually has a lot of play to it, and you can get either ends of the draw. You can get the I win Aetherworks draw, but you still have a lot of play to your deck.
Yeah, you're not just looking through your deck, hoping to find a Marvel, and that's the only thing that pays off in your deck. You have a bunch of other things. That's what I think I like about the deck, is the ability to play Ishkanal and Noxious Gearhulk mid-game while you're not just digging for an Aetherworks or something.
You can actually win a game without casting Aetherworks Marvel. It's that is your main way to victory, but you can win a game without doing it. And there's only one matchup where, in some matchups I might shave 1 or 2 of them, but there is a matchup where I would just take all of them out or whatever, just to make my opponent's deck way worse. And when we get to the sideboard, you'll see the idea there. But
yeah, we're moving to that now. Talk about some of the standouts in the sideboard, because you got a lot of pieces here. You got a lot of things that kind of fight specific decks between Lost Legacy and Flaying Tendrils. You're kind of all over the place here.
Yeah, so with decks like this, with combo decks, right, it's always really hard to sideboard correctly, right? Because if I leave Aetherworks Marvel in my deck, I don't want to take out too much energy generation. I don't want to take out my Woodweaver's Puzzle Knots, even though in some matchups they're not great. It's just this card by itself gets you 6 energy or 7 energy with an Aetherworks Marvel, so it just goes off by itself. So you have limited space. You can shave some of your 4-ofs. You can maybe take out your cards maybe Grasso isn't good, or maybe Liliana isn't good. So you have a couple 3 and 4-ofs to bring in, and it's for specific matchups, right? Lost Legacy is against any other deck trying to Emrakul us quickly, or we just need to get some kind of card out of their deck. You have a couple Flaying Tendrils for the aggro matchups. Vehicles on the draw can be kind of bad, if they have a lot of the 1-drops, or any of the graveyard decks mono black, black blue, black red zombies, whatever you want to call that deck. That deck's actually kind of a nightmare. Because they can just interact on an axis that you can't deal with, and they can flood the board, and your Emrakul is just not good against them sometimes, and stuff like that. And then you have a couple, you have Transgress the Mind and Pick the Brain. Those are kind of obvious. It's mirrorish matches, anything where you want to interact with their hand. I like Transgress the Mind a lot against blue-white. I find a lot of the games that I lose, I get Gideoned, and Gideon just +1 and attack me for 5 is just way too good sometimes. I can't keep up with that deck. I actually got to pick the brain somebody's Emrakuls on camera today, the mirrorish match, which was great and stuff. And then, some other stuff like Natural State. You just want to interact with Copter and their removal spell, the enchantment removal spell.
Stasis Snare.
Stasis Snare. I just blanked for a second. And stuff like that. We have a couple 1-ofs in the sideboard too. I think you're going to get to those. The World Breaker.
We got World Breaker, Cletus, and I think Tireless Tracker.
Well, we have a couple Tireless Trackers. Let me get to that one in a minute. We have a 1-of World Breaker and a 1-of Cletus. Now, we have ways to find the main deck, right? We have Vessel of Nascency, we have Liliana, we have a Grapple of the Past, and we have a Transverse to Uvenwald. So it's they're a 1-of, but you're going to find them. And they're good in certain matchups and bad in certain matchups. World Breaker's good when you want to kill pesky permanents, or you just want another big beefy thing to do. Cletus is good, obviously, against aggressive decks and the zombie deck, so you bring that in. Now, this is where the deck actually gets cool. We have 3 tireless trackers on the board. Originally, we had 4, but when we went to the Transverse Uvenwald version, I was like, I think we can cut one of these and make another space in the sideboard. That was Bradley Carpenter's idea, and I loved it. Because there's a matchup out there where like you just don't want to have Aetherworks Marvel, and that's against like the control decks.
Yep.
They're bringing in negates, they're bringing in Ceremonious Rejection, and those cards are such big tempo losses, and they're just so good against your deck that we can do something to beat that.
Right, just bring in creatures.
Yeah, so you just take out Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, you take out Aetherworks Marvel, and like you shave like an Emrakul or 2 possibly. It just depends on exactly like if you're on the player draw what you want to do. And you pretty much just bring in all 15 cards from the sideboard besides like the Flaying Tendrils and maybe not the natural states. And you're just like this dork deck. Like you're just going to play Tireless Tracker on 3 or Tireless Tracker on 4 and play a land. And hopefully they're just staring at a hand that has Negate and Ceremonious Rejection in, and you just don't have targets in your deck anymore.
The message just in. Tireless Tracker's still really good against control decks.
Yeah, I mean, the card is just insane, right? It's like one of the better cards. It looked so innocuous when we first saw it get printed a few years ago, and it's so good. So.
All right, well, the deck looks sweet. It's definitely a nice breath of fresh air in this format that seems to be kind of dominated by just Delirium and blue-white. But having this kind of concoction here is nice to have, and the rest of your team's kind of working on it, and we might see it more in this tournament and maybe at the Invitational.
Yeah, maybe. I'm actually not going to be at the Invitational. Work is getting in the way, so I won't be there. My team will be there. I will be preparing as if I'm going to go. Hopefully my team does well. We're just hoping that Bradley Carpenter does pretty well today. I mean, just like any points is good. Any points at the Invitational is good because he's pretty much got Season 3 locked up. I don't want to, crossing my fingers, don't want to jinx it, but getting him in the Players' Championship, I think we talked about this in New Jersey, is goal number 1 for our team. So we're trying to figure that out. We have a couple ideas already for the Invitational, and depending on how this deck does today, it's a strong contender for sure.
All right, well, we'll be paying attention to it. I'm sure people at home are glad to see it. Thanks for joining me here in the Sideboard.
Absolutely, Nick.
Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Knoxville.